On today's episode, we avoid all of the drama in the fishing world by taking an in-depth look at the Bassmaster Classic winning bait, and we answer all of your fishing questions about swim jig trailers, improving hookup rates, and tracking in a kayak, and an honest look at mystery tackle boxes and subscription boxes. All that and more on this episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
Welcome to the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk Podcast. As always, we are brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. You guys know ALF is the first place that I check for new fishing gear. It should be yours as well. They have a great selection of new and used fishing rods and reels. They have an ever-expanding line of baits. They have the best customer service of any company that I've ever shopped with in the fishing industry. They have great shipping. They're just great dudes right there in southern Indiana, a great Midwestern company that actually cares about you as a customer. And they care about you so much that right now they are offering a ridiculous 30% rebate on all St. Croix purchases and all Dakota Lithium purchases. Yes, you heard that right. ALF now carries Dakota Lithium, and you can get a 30% rebate in the form of a store gift card for any purchase you make now through April 8th on St. Croix rods or Dakota Lithium batteries. That is an insane deal. You're not going to see anywhere else. St. Croix, Dakota Lithium, both 30% rebates over at AmericanLegacyFishing.com right now. And as always, if what you're looking for is not on sale, you can use code TACKLETALK10. Tackle Talk 10 at checkout saves you 10% off over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. Be sure to use code TACKLETALK10. All right, everybody. First things first here, I've got quite a few DMs and emails, so I'm going to start right off the bat with it. No, we are not going to spend any time going over the drama in pro fishing right now. If you want drama, if you want to catch up on all that nonsense with Major League Fishing and James Watson or other anglers reporting other anglers for blowing out bedfish or whatever, I will leave that to the 10,000 other fishing shows there are out there that are going to cover that. We sort of have the same approach to this that we've had over the past probably year or so with like forward-facing sonar. There are plenty of people out there that you can tune into for drama and to cover those type of things. That's not who we are here at Tackle Talk. We try to keep things positive. We try and keep it educational and informational as much as we can over here on this show. So do I have feelings about those situations? Absolutely. Am I going to share them on this show? No, that's not really what we do here these days. Now, sort of along those same lines, though, if you do want to see another side of us and hear me kind of discuss some topics and opinions that I don't normally discuss, I did have the pleasure of going on Ken Duke and Brian the Carpenter's show for an episode of Bass After Dark last week. And if you've never watched Bass After Dark, it is essentially a late night show that they started probably a few months back at this point, maybe 6-8 months. I don't know how long it's been. It's been around for a little bit. But they go live every Thursday night and they bring on 2 or 3 guests to debate a certain topic or question. And the cool twist is that none of the guests know who the other guests are until they join the stream. So I had no idea who I would be talking with and their opinions beforehand. But Ken and Brian know everybody so well that they're able to pick these guests and they kind of know where people will naturally fall and where they'll naturally disagree. So they pick people that can obviously have like a civil, thoughtful discussion about a topic at hand that they know that these people are not going to have the same opinion on. And so that's what we had last Thursday. Last Thursday, the question was, how does the fishing industry control the narrative? And being truly independent here at Tackle Talk, in terms of influence from rod brands, reel brands, line, baits, boats, electronics, all those type of companies, I think we have a pretty clear view and an unbiased view of what the industry is as a whole and how it kind of sort of works and kind of manipulates the message that gets out there. So I was one of the guests on that episode. I was certainly the younger voice of this episode because the other two guests had much more experience in the industry than me, maybe more experience in the industry than I've been alive, both of them. It was an honor getting to talk to both of them. You had Chicago writer and personality Steve Sargent Sarley, and then you had the one and only longtime legendary host of Bass Talk Live, Mark Jeffries. So we had a very interesting sort of in-depth conversation about the industry as a whole, and I'm sure some of you guys would find it interesting if you haven't already listened to it. So really quickly, I'm going to insert some audio right here from some of the episode to give you guys sort of a taste of what it was like.
But this is a very serious question. How does the fishing industry control the narrative? And who have we got to talk about that?
We have, first up tonight, we have the founder of Bass Talk Live and BTL, the number one most deserving to be, yet is not, for some egregious, inexplicable reason, in the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. We have Mark Jeffries. We have a legendary Chicago outdoors media personality, Mr. Steve Sarley.
BDC, we got one more panelist.
That's right. This man is older than he looks, but he is not Matt Damon, or is he? He is the host of the Tackle Talk podcast, Mr. Andrew Hayes.
When I think of the industry, I think of, I don't think of some legacy media outlet. I think of GSM, Pure Fishing, Rather, Pradco. Like, I think of these giant conglomerate companies that are the fishing industry. And those people, I think it's their job to try and control the narrative. That's marketing, right? Marketing is trying to control the narrative while it gets to your end consumer. So on that side, I guess I don't fault them, because if you're not trying to control the narrative as a giant company selling anything, bass boats, rods, reels, baits, whatever, I would argue you're probably not doing your job. But then on the flip side, now we get all of our information because we don't have a New York Times or whatever of bass fishing. They're not covering us. So all of our stuff's coming from professional anglers, YouTubers, social media, and websites. And all of those people have somebody that they answer to where they're giving favorable reviews to all of these products because there's some vested interest to have a positive review of that. So an angler that's sponsored by Arc Rods is going to tell you when he makes his YouTube video about, reviewing his Arc Rods, it's going to be positive because those people are paying his way to go professional bass fish. Your YouTubers, they could be getting paid, they could be getting free gear, they could be getting discounts, whatever it is. There's some sort of incentive to keep the people that they're reviewing the products or whatever it is happy because they want to keep that sort of train going. Social media is the same way. Websites have advertisers they have to keep happy. How many, websites have you seen where there's a review, but it's really more of like an advertorial where they're talking about this product and they wouldn't dare say one negative thing about it? When's the last time you saw someone like, a Wired to Fish or somebody just torch a product that they didn't like? It doesn't happen really, right? No. Everybody has this incentive to speak positively about gear. And so in that sense, I do think the industry controls the narrative because they have all of these sort of plants out there, and people they work with to get the word out and disseminate information. And it's all positive.
Oh, Mark Jeffries is calling a timeout. So that means there's a timeout on the floor.
All right. This is the last time I'm going to say this. All right. Because I totally disagree with you, Andrew. And here's why. The consumer controls the narrative. Bottom line. Because if the consumer does not spend their money, then a company has to react.
I mean, I think there's truth in both statements for sure. I don't think Andrew said anything false.
I'm on Andrew's side here, basically. I will say, for Mark to say that the consumer controls the narrative, I think the consumer ultimately controls the dollars and the cents and who prospers in the industry, but I don't think they control the narrative.
Yeah, I would say, I guess to make a differentiating point there, right? I think the industry and the companies probably control the narrative and they control the flow of information way more than consumers do. I think we can probably all agree on the information itself gets out from these companies, from these marketing outlets, from that kind of stuff, which is kind of, the original question there. But I think Mark has a point that the consumers control longevity of products. They control staying power, whether something ends up in the $2 bin at Bass Pro because no one's buying them and it's a double whopper plopper and was a dumb idea and no one wants to pay $17 for a double whopper plopper. The market has spoken, right? And that product is tossed aside. But I think in terms of when someone brings a new product to the forefront or someone introduces something, it comes out at ICAST, it comes out at the Bassmaster Classic, and they have their army of people that go out there onto the internet, onto the fishing circuits and everything, and they're out there talking about product X. And every single person that's out there talking about product X is talking about it positively. And then you have this weird wrinkle where even people who don't work with those companies still can't afford to talk negatively about them, because what happens next year if your rod company drops you, your reel company drops you? I can't afford to have bad tape out there of me talking about, St. Croix and how much I hate St. Croix, because what if next year I got to go with my tail between my legs to St. Croix and they need to be my title sponsor of my Elite Series career. So there's this also weird thing where even competitors of, at least the marketing people, aren't really, talking negatively about things, because it's just this giant circle and vicious churn of the same money going in circles year after year after year.
Mark, what do you have to say to what Andrew just said? I mean, I think he's effectively pushed back.
Well, I mean, I agree with some of the points that he says, but at the
Is that an apology?
No, it's not. Brian, and I'm not done yet, Brian. Oh, listen.
So there you go. If you guys want to check it out, again, not necessarily the subject matter that we cover on this show a lot of times, because we try to stay true to tackle talk and to our roots and cover gear and tactics and things that hopefully make you a better angler. But I also understand there's sort of a natural curiosity and an interest for people for other aspects of this industry, other opinions that I may or may not hold. So Bass After Dark episode that we just did last Thursday is a great way for you guys to kind of see some of that. So just go search Bass After Dark on YouTube, go click the latest episode of How Does the Fishing Industry Control the Narrative, or I'll put the link right in the description here to make it easy to find. You guys can just click that. But again, thanks to Ken, thanks to Brian for having me on, thanks to Mark and Steve for a great conversation. It was a ton of fun to get the chance to kind of be sort of a different side of things and kind of talk a little bit about things we don't normally talk about here on Tackle Talk. All right, the next item of business here, I am in the process of putting together some YouTube videos for you guys from the Bassmaster Classic, specifically from the gear side. So you guys have heard some of the commentary on last week's episode. We have some full interviews with some visuals that I'm excited to put on YouTube for you guys so that you can not only hear, but also see the new products that we were talking about from the Classic straight from these companies. So the first of those videos is up now. It's a full conversation with Dan from Great Lakes Finesse, where you get to see the Juvie Craw, you get to see the Hellgramite, the new sneaky swim bait head they have, the new colors of the Snack Craw. You can head over to YouTube right now, just search Tackle Talk Podcast to find our channel, or I'll put the link in the description of this show as well. It'll be right under the Bass After Dark link, so you guys can click that as well. But go check them out. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm trying to give you guys more video content, hopefully this year in 2024. I know you guys ask a lot of times about visual sides of things, so we're going to try that, and we're going to put some more videos up on YouTube. All right, the next thing we have here on today's episode, we are going to jump into the Bassmaster Classic winning bait. And we mentioned this on last week's episode, but obviously last week's episode didn't leave much time to go into this fully, because last week's episode was chock full of angler interviews, of tournament recap, expo recap, new products, company interviews. So thank you all, obviously, for the great feedback from last week's episode. I'm glad you guys liked it. Thank you again for your patience as we got it out on Thursday morning instead of our normal Tuesday time, because a travel schedule is coming back to Ohio from Oklahoma, and hopefully it was worth the wait. And we don't often do these like 2 hour and 15-minute episodes or whatever it was, but full disclosure, those episodes are a nightmare to edit, but I think they're worth it. I think at last I checked when I released that episode, I think I had 80 plus audio tracks that went into that episode before editing, but those are my favorite episodes, because hopefully you guys get something out of those type of shows that you don't get anywhere else on the internet, kind of a full recap and something that I think not a lot of other people are doing. So I hope it was worth it. And again, thank you guys for your patience as we got that out. All right, everybody, we'll get back to the episode here in just a second. But first, the Tackle Talk podcast is powered by Dakota Lithium. And it's not just this podcast, but also me personally out there on the water. I'm a kayak guy. The places we go, the ways we fish, good batteries are essential. I'd be SOL some days if I was out there in the kayak, in some of the water that we fish, and my kayak motor just stopped working on me. And that right there is why the only battery that you're going to catch me with out there on the water these days is a Dakota Lithium. Between the quality of the components, the peace of mind that the customer service and the warranty gives me, they're the clear-cut winner for me when it comes to lithium batteries. And if you want your own Dakota Lithium batteries, you're in luck, because you can head over to www.dakotalithium.com and you can use code TACKLETALK10 Tackle Talk 10 for 10% off all day, every day. Any battery you need, whether it's 10 amp hour or 100 amp hour, it's 10% off with code TackleTalk10 over at www.dakotalithium.com, the official lithium battery of Bassmaster. All right, let's get back to our episode here. So today, we are going to take a more in-depth look at the bait that is widely considered the 2024 Bassmaster Classic winning bait, which is the Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 in matte shad. And Justin Hamner, your 2024 Bassmaster Classic champion, was using multiple baits. Obviously, he had a Yozuri jerkbait, he had a chatterbait, crankbaits, but the lure that is being hailed as the deciding factor and what put the weight in the boat was the Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 in matte shad. And obviously, Justin, I don't think is sponsored by Megabass, so you're probably not going to hear him say, the model or the color or anything like that publicly very often, I would assume. I think he's probably going to talk more about, the Yozuri and, bait fuel and that kind of stuff that obviously he's sponsored by. I don't fault him for that at all, but we have pictures, we have live video, and obviously a lot of those feature the Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 in matte shad, which is being considered kind of the MVP of his bait lineup. So let's take a look at this bait in particular and what makes it so special, and if, capital I, capital F here, you want to pick one up. So first, as always, we're going to go to Megabass's website. We're going to go to kind of the marketing department's explanation of the Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1, and then we will dissect it for ourselves. So it says here, the Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 is a mid-range jerkbait designed to increase the depth of the original Vision 110 by up to 3 feet. The Vision 110 Plus 1's bill is crafted to eliminate the traditional issues of high water resistance, fatigue, and deadened darting action often associated with long bill minnows, while at the same time preserving the legacy and action of the original Vision 110. By positioning the line eye close to the body, the water resistance is reduced in order to make it easier to work the Vision 110 Plus 1. Thoroughly tested, the Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 darts and twitches more aggressively than the original, traveling further with each snap of the rod. In addition, this angler-friendly design also channels more water towards the lure's forehead and along the carefully sculpted body, allowing for irresistible action with the slightest angler input. The Vision 110 Plus 1 is finished off with sticky sharp hooks, 2 internal rattles, and a dual tungsten multi-way moving balancer system designed to produce superior long-distance castability even in tough conditions. The Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1, the legend, just got deeper. And then your specs here, it says it's 4 1/3 inches in length, a ½ ounce in weight, and is manufactured to be a true suspending jerkbait. Okay, so there are a few things here to point out that are true about the Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 from what we just read. First, the most obvious one, the big duh moment here, it dives deeper. When you see the Plus 1 or even a Plus 2 at the end of a Megabass jerkbait, it means that it runs deeper than the regular version. So it has a longer bill, as you would probably assume, and it has an advertised running depth of like 4 to 9 feet. Now, that's a pretty big range right there, right? 4 to 9 feet. And when you think of that, a lot of that is going to depend on your cast, and it's going to depend on your diameter of line. So if I absolutely bomb a Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 with like 10-pound fluoro on it, I've never actually measured it per se, but I would guess I'm probably getting down to about 8-ish feet. Again, maybe that 9 if I really push it, but I think I'm probably right around 8. I know that I've hit the bottom when we get to 8-foot water and like in the dead middle of a really long cast. So I know it at least gets to 8 in certain situations, but whereas a regular Megabass Vision 110 with that same setup, that same cast, I would guess I probably get down to about 5 feet. So the Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 definitely gets down deeper as advertised. Obviously, both the regular 110 and the 110 Plus 1 weigh the exact same. You're going to hear a lot of people probably, I would assume anyway, think that a Plus 1 probably weighs a little bit more. It just kind of looks a little bigger because of that bill, but that's deceiving. It weighs the exact same. Both the 110 and the 110 Plus 1 weigh in at a ½ ounce. Now, the other thing that Megabass mentioned there in the write-up, and that it is true, is that the Plus 1 slashes a little harder than the regular 110. So even if you're not looking at running depth and you're just looking for a more aggressive dart from that jerkbait, the 110 Plus 1 can give you that as well. Now, of course, the downsides to the Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 are going to be twofold. They're going to be price and they're going to be durability. And price, obviously, everybody knows Megabass is expensive. Vision 110s are no exception. A Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 is going to run you like $24.99 plus tax, making it a very expensive jerkbait, and one of the reasons why some people avoid Megabass Vision 110s. You're either someone that says, you know what, I want the best, I'm willing to pay for the best, and those people have 110s in their box, or you're someone that says, you know what, there is no way that I'm going to pay $25 for a jerkbait, and you're going to be a little bit more frugal, and you're probably going to go with other options. And I'm not here to tell you which is right or which is wrong, because I've been both of those guys at one point in my life. But I will tell you, I do have a few Megabass Vision 110s and 110 Plus 1s that I own for very specific situations. So the Megabass Vision 110 and 110 Plus 1, in my eyes, are for ultra calm, ultra tough conditions. Sunny, bluebird skies, calm water, no wind, dead of winter maybe, you name it. When conditions are tough, that usually means I will break out a Vision 110 or a 110 Plus 1 because they're just so dialed for their responsiveness, for their suspend rates, their consistency of motion, the stopping power that they have, supernatural paint jobs. Just when a fish is going to get a really good look at that bait and it actually has to decide whether or not to eat, a Megabass is a great option. But if we want to talk specifically about the Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1s, I obviously pick one of those up if one, I'm fishing deeper water. Duh. Again, everybody understands that part. But I will also pick up a Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 if I'm fishing shallower water, but I want to hit the bottom. So if I'm fishing around hard bottom and those fish are feeding on the bottom, I can cast a Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 in 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 feet, and I can stop and start that almost like a little crankbait in the rocks. So if you use that Plus 1 with its longer bill to get down to a deeper running depth quicker, I can actually tick the bottom on chunk rock, gravel, whatever that hard bottom is. So in like late spring or around that fall feed time, a Plus 1 in shallow water around rock is a sneaky option while everybody else out there is throwing crankbaits, spinnerbaits, chatterbaits, whatever they're throwing. But the problem with a Megabass Vision 110 or 110 Plus 1 is always going to be durability. Be prepared to break a few of these. Megabass jerkbaits are known for a lot of things. Durability of the bill is not one of them. And even though a Vision 110 Plus 1 has a bigger, longer bill, they still crack. I have 2 broken 110 Plus 1s that are over here to my right on the table looking at me, just reminding me of $50 down the drain of broken jerkbaits. And just every time I look at them, there's this little bit of heartbreak. But to me, that's what lures are made for. Lures are made for catching fish. They're not made for sitting on the shelf and looking pretty. So in my eyes, if I break a few in the pursuit of big bass, to me, that's just part of the game. And the last part, I think, of what makes a Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1, and specifically the one that Justin Hamner was using to win the Classic so special, was the color. Megabass is known for their extravagant, numerous, even limited edition colors, to the point where grown men will fight with each other on the internet for hours because they got cart robbed and they didn't get some, exclusive color that just came out last Tuesday, and they've got to add it to their collection, even though it looks like 3 other colors that Megabass has already made and sells every day of the week. But that's a whole different story, different rabbit hole we can go down, like the limited Respect series colors and stuff like that. But the color that Justin Hamner was throwing was matte shad. And we mentioned this last week. That is my favorite color of Megabass Vision 110s right now. My buddy Ryan got me hooked on that color last year. It's just so darn natural looking in the water. Not a ton of flash, not a ton of attention-grabbing detail. It looks like a dull, normal bait fish. And that ever so slight hint of like off-white, yellow kind of tint that's on that body, but just barely, and then you put that on that dull, gray, kind of semi-translucent body, and it just looks about as natural as it gets. So I think those matte colors are making a surge because people are starting to realize that it's not always about looking like a disco ball under the water and attracting the attention of everything that's, swimming within a 2-mile radius of this bait, sometimes subtlety is the move. And so think back to like last week when we talked to Great Lakes about their matte colors of their soft plastics. Dan said, and I think he said it perfectly, he said, sometimes we want the fish to feel like they found the bait, not the other way around. And I think that's spot on. Bait fish are always trying to avoid predators. They're not trying to stick out like sore thumbs. So I think there's probably some credibility to these sort of matte patterns and these less shiny paint jobs. And that matte shad from Megabass does that very, very well. So there you go. There's a little rundown on the Megabass Vision 110+1 in matte shad. Last I checked, I think they're still available on most websites, but the selection seems to be going up and down depending on the day. So hopefully that doesn't mean that these are too scarce to find in the foreseeable future, because again, this is one of my go-tos for certain situations. All right, folks, there's some quick jerkbait talk, and in just a second, we are going to get to the mailbag powered by Dakota Lithium, but first, we are brought to you in part by RTIC Coolers. And did you know that RTIC is now available in Walmart? Yes, you heard that right. I saw it the other day at my local Walmart for the first time, and I couldn't believe it. Now your favorite coolers, your tumblers, your drinkware, all could be available right down the street. At my Walmart, it was back with the camping section. They had a great selection of classic tumblers, which are a staple in our household, travel mugs, and the ultra tough coolers. But whether you see them at your local store or online, wherever you see those 4 letters RTIC, you know that you're getting the best quality for the best price. That's because RTIC has ultra rugged products built for people like us that love the outdoors, that might be a little tough on your gear, and they're half the price of the other guys. So you can head over to www.rticoutdoors.com to check out their full line of hard coolers, soft coolers, travel mugs, tumblers, backpacks, totes, and more. Or you can use their new store locator on their website to search their 4,300 plus stores and locations where you can find RTIC gear near you. Again, that's www.rticoutdoors.com. Keep the adventure going with RTIC. All right, let's get to the mailbag here, powered by Dakota Lithium.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Mailbag, powered by Dakota Lithium Batteries. Adventure awaits at dakotalithium.com.
Alrighty, folks, we're cracking open the mailbag here. The first question is from Mitchell, and he says, "Hi, Andrew. I'm an avid 16-year-old fisherman who dove headfirst into your podcast this winter while waiting for fishing season. I've loved every second of it, and I'm very thankful that you keep the podcast unbiased and clean. This year's local expo brought the big glide bait trend to my attention. My cousin and fishing buddy got bit by the glide bait bug, and he bought 3 of them. I, on the other hand, am too cheap to bite the bullet and don't know enough to spend the money. I've heard you talk on the pod for a split second about glide baits, and I'm wondering when and where to fish big glide baits. I live around the greater Grand Rapids area of Michigan for reference. When I thought of this question, I immediately knew I had to submit it to the mailbag. Thanks again for making your wealth of knowledge attainable to the younger fishing community." Well, thanks, man. I appreciate the question here, and I would say welcome to the club. I caught the big bait bug probably a year or 2 ago at this point, and there is no turning back. So it sounds like your cousin and fishing buddy caught it, and you might be right on the verge. And I know we've talked about it before, but there is just something special about catching a fish on a big glide bait versus a standard lure. I think it just makes that catch so much more memorable, so much more exciting. It's almost like the difference between catching a fish on a homemade lure and then catching a fish on a lure that you bought from the store, right? The homemade lure just means so much more to you, and I think that's kind of the same way it is when you have these sort of awesome eats on big baits. So your question, though, was when to throw a big glide bait or where to throw a big glide bait. So since you're in Michigan, I'd say you're fairly similar to me here in Ohio. So your 2 hottest times are likely going to be early spring and then late fall here in the Midwest for big glide baits, just based on forage size, based on activity level of those bass. Those late fall, early spring days are going to be a great time to throw a big bait. But it also depends on where you're fishing. So like on a lake, say like in the spring, I would say those pre-spawn staging areas, especially like mid to late day as those water temps warm up, like go to the east bank, because those are going to get that direct sunlight from that west sun as it starts to set, making them warm up a little quicker usually than the other side of the lake. But on a river, man, it is totally a different ecosystem where you can go out there and you can throw those baits almost any time of year. Yes, winter may be a little tougher, but spring, summer, fall are fine. It's a lot more about where you place that bait, where the water level is, where the flow is, all that kind of stuff to me has a bigger difference when I'm out there fishing these big baits on the river than I do on a lake. On a lake, obviously, you got to play the time of the year. You got to play to those bass because those bass are not as naturally aggressive, I think, usually as river fish are. I think river fish are way more opportunistic. They're way less calculated about when they do and don't eat. It's just about bait placement. So where I would throw a big glide bait on any of those bodies of water, the first and foremost thing I'm looking for is wood. Boat docks, laydowns, brush piles, stumps, big fallen trees, working something like a 6, 7, 8, 9-inch glide bait slowly and methodically down like parallel to a big piece of wooded cover is absolutely deadly. And there's just something about that big bait that's able to draw those big fish out of that cover, unlike anything else that I have in my box. Now, the only thing you have to watch, obviously, is losing your bait, which is why I only throw big, expensive glide baits when I'm in a kayak or when I'm in a boat, so that way if I do get snagged, and probably when I do get snagged, I'm able to get them back, because big glide baits, at least usually for me, from the bank, are heartbreakers. So I always make sure I'm in a boat or I'm in a kayak, because these glides usually don't run more than, everything from a couple inches deep to maybe a couple feet deep at most. And so if you do get snagged, 99.9% of the time, you can get that bait back as long as you're on a boat or as long as you're on a kayak, something to go up to that snag to free it loose. But those baits are like $100, $150, $200 sometimes. They are way too expensive to be losing. So my big piece of advice there, throw them around wood and make sure you're in some sort of boat or some sort of kayak. All right, the next question here is from William, and he says, your podcast has given my 9-year-old son and I a great opportunity to bond and learn together on our 2-hour drive to camp, so thank you. We live in upstate New York and thus fish areas with a ton of grass, but I'm struggling to match my trailers to my swim jigs, spinner baits, etc., and I'm looking for a little advice specifically on trailers that work well in grassy lakes. I did just pick up some of the Crush City baits after listening to the Wheeler episode, so I'm excited to try those. Thanks for the question, William. I appreciate it. And first off, the first part of the submission here is what it is all about. Listening to something like this and it giving you the ability to bond better with your kids, that's what fishing should be all about. Family memories, passing down traditions, and little wisdoms and things like that, spending time together away from the rest of the world. I love hearing that more than anything. So that is awesome. But your question is about matching your trailers to your swim jigs, your spinner baits, that kind of stuff in grassy lakes. So for me, my idea of a trailer around grass or vegetation is going to be a straight tail of some sort. Boot tails, crazy appendages, they all have the ability to kind of pick up grass and vegetation, and the vegetation hinders the action of that soft plastic. So I usually lean in to the obstruction of weeds and I go straight tail. So weeds aren't going to hinder the action much of a straight tail because there is no big, wide, swinging, aggressive action to them. It's much more subtle, much more natural. So like a soft, wiggle or flowing of that tail. So for those type of baits, you mentioned one, obviously, the Crush City baits. They just came out with the freeloader. That's a great option. You have the staple for straight tail minnows, which is the Hog Farmer Spunk Shad. I have a ton of spunk shads in my garage. Great spinnerbait trailer, great chatterbait trailer, swim jig trailer. They're just great, again, when you are around those weeds. If you want to go even skinnier, you can go with something like a 6 cents juggle minnow or something like that. More slender, more finesse than something like a spunk shad for sure, and a freeloader too. Something that's just going to give you a little different, skinnier profile. But I would lean in to that straight tail. I fell into the trap a long time ago of feeling like I needed to have aggressive actions from my trailers, and that's just not always the case. Even with something like swim jigs that don't have their own action, like a chatterbait or a spinnerbait does with the blades, you can still go out there and throw something like a subtle straight tail and have a great day with it. So that would be my recommendation. The next question is from Peyton, who says, have you ever fished a mystery tackle box? If not, I recommend you do. I have some cool baits that I've got, and they catch some monsters. My PB was caught on the football jig from that box. Happy fishing, stay safe, and God bless. Hey, Peyton. Yeah, I would say I've definitely dabbled with almost every mystery box that's out there. A long, long time ago, a land far away, I used to work with Lucky Tackle Box. Then I moved over to Mystery Tackle Box, and then obviously we partnered with Dark Horse Tackle way more recently. Other than that, there's Monster Bass, which is kind of the old owner of Lucky Tackle Box, if you do or don't know that. So I've tried almost every one of them out there. Now, here's what I think people should realize about subscription boxes like Mystery Tackle Box, Monster Bass, all of those. They are awesome if you're just looking for a surprise, kind of like a fun thing each month, a nice little surprise mail day when you're starting out or you just want to expand your tackle repertoire. They're great. What they're not great at is being a replacement for regular tackle shopping for people who are way more experienced or who are tournament anglers, or if you're truly looking at them as a money-saving option, because that's not the point of them. Again, the point is a pleasant surprise, some fun fishing gear to use, and not to take too seriously, because a lot of those boxes have their own cheaper kind of in-house brands. They inflate the prices a little bit. It's not this too good to be true box, right? It's just a fun box where you can get baits each month. Now, I will say, as far as boxes go, I think the Dark Horse Tackle Boys do it right because it's at least truly unique. They pack it with baits every single month from like American small businesses. So you get to try these cool baits from companies you may have never even heard of, but they're people doing it the right way. They're bootstrapping these small tackle companies, and you can feel good about supporting them. You can feel good about trying them out and discovering some truly awesome small businesses that, again, you may have never even heard of. But yes, depending on what you're looking for from them, monthly subscription boxes can be a good option for some people. All right, everybody, we'll get back to the episode here in just a second, but first, we are brought to you in part by Mossy Oak and Mossy Oak Fishing. Now, when you think Mossy Oak, you probably think hunting, you probably think camo, but I'm here to tell you that when you think Mossy Oak, you should think fishing. That's because one of the most respected names in all of fishing apparel is Mossy Oak. Mossy Oak Fishing is the top choice of many of today's top pros and some of the most successful anglers in the world. People like Kevin Van Dam, Hank Parker, Greg Hackney, Jordan Lee, Ott Defoe, and more. They have a full line of all-weather apparel for any condition that Mother Nature throws at you. They have their ultra-comfortable and protective tech shirts, which feature Mossy Oak's Hydroplex technology that removes moisture from your skin and pushes it to the outside of the material so it evaporates faster. They have offshore and salt gear, shorts, super comfortable regular tees and hoodies, and their casual Bill Dance collection. All of that and more from one of the most respected names in the history of the outdoors industry, Mossy Oak. So you can head over to www.store.mossyoak.com and click fishing at the top of the page to take a look for yourself and see why so many of today's top anglers choose Mossy Oak. Again, that's www.store.mossyoak.com. All right, let's get back to our episode here. All right, the next question here is from Owen, and he says, fish it, box it, trash it, Dobbins Fury, Duckett Wheeler Signature Rod, and St. Croix Bass X. I'm looking to get a heavy action rod in the $120 to $160 range before spring fishing starts here in northern Indiana. I'm looking for something that I can flip with, I can punch heavy Texas rigs and jigs with, and maybe even 6-inch swim baits. These are the three brands I've been looking at, and I'm more than open to other suggestions if you don't like these or if you think there's something better, Owen. Okay, so we have someone that's obviously been tuning in to Serious Angler here, the Serious Angler podcast, Bailey and Andy. It's kind of like their thing over there. They do this fish it, box it, trash it. We were on maybe a month ago at this point. It was a fun episode for sure, but basically you have to pick one of these and you have to really like it. That's the one you fish. You pick one that you just think is okay. You put it in the box for later, and then you have one you don't like and you trash it. So of those, you said Dobbins Fury, Duckett Wheeler Signature Rod, and St. Croix Bass X. So of those three, I think I'm going to have to fish the Dobbins Fury. That's the one that I would put highest. The one I have to box, I would say, would be the St. Croix Bass X. That's the one that's the next step down. And then the one that I would trash would probably be the Duckett. And nothing personal to Duckett or Jacob. I'm just not a Duckett rod guy. I think for the money, there are better options out there in my eyes. So for flipping, punching, pitching, you said maybe even big swim baits, To me, again, feel like a broken record here. It's me again saying the same thing over and over again. The Dobyns Fury 735C, I think, has yet to be beat in my eyes for the price. And I'm not a guy that just changes my recommendation or whatever to keep things fresh and new and exciting or whatever that may be. I change my recommendation when something comes along that truly knocks off my previous choice. And so far, I have not found a better meat stick for the price than that Dobyns Fury 735C. They're like $129, which means you can probably get it for like $116-ish with Tackle Talk 10 code over at American Legacy, and it is truly a beast of a rod for $116. The Bass X are really nice. The new Fenwicks, the Eagles, and the HMGs are both in your price range. Those are both nice. You could look at a Daiwa Tatula rod. I have one of those from a couple years back that's actually a pretty solid flipping rod, but my number one choice in that price range is still going to be the Dobyns Fury 735C. All right, the next question here is from Paul, and he says, "Hey, Andrew, I really enjoy your podcast. Thanks for all you do. I used to fish growing up mostly in farm ponds, and then after going to college and grad school, I moved 3 times across multiple states, and I didn't fish for 10 plus years. But last year, I decided to pick it back up again. Last year and so far this year, I've noticed that when I go fishing, I have a lot of days where I don't catch anything. I would say 50% of the time I'm getting skunked, and then 35% of the time I'm catching 1 to 3 fish, and then another 15% of the time I'm actually catching a good day's worth. What advice would you have for me to get more consistent results?" Oh man, this question right here hurts my heart because I think this is how so many people feel, and you shouldn't feel this way. In a world where we're always comparing ourselves to what we think other people are achieving, we always have this feeling like we're behind. So you watch YouTube, you watch Instagram, Facebook, whatever, you see all these dudes just smoking fish all the time, when in reality, you have no idea how many hours went into that, and you didn't see all the hours that they weren't catching them. So a perfect example is us. Right? We have days, me and Ryan, where we will go out on the water, 2 dudes that are pretty darn effective anglers that know these bodies of water really well, and we will have days where we get blanked from like 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., days that just absolutely suck. And it happens to us quite a bit, right? But those are the days that you don't see. No one's making posts about the days that suck. They're making the posts about their highlight reel, and they're making it seem like they're always on these fish, when in reality, it might have been 2 to 3 trips to put together those fish that you're seeing, or maybe even more. So if you're going out there and 50% of the time you're getting skunked, and the other 50% of the time, like you said, you're out there at least catching a few, or you're having a good day, man, that's us. That's all of us. So we all have those days that we wish we didn't. But then I also think those days are what make fishing so fun. It's the struggle, because without the struggle, there's no excitement for success. So I wouldn't appreciate the days where I really do just smoke fish nearly as much if I went out every day and caught good fish. I'm glad there are days that aren't great, because it makes me appreciate those days that are great even more. But I also don't just want to be the guy that gives you that sappy answer. So I will try and give you an answer to your question. I would say keep an accurate log of your trips and then compare them. Log the good days, log the bad days, log things like date, air temp, water temp, weather, location, lures that you were using, lures that worked, lures that didn't work, and then compare them, because that data is invaluable. So you start to see a pattern when you look at all of this data and you look at it side by side. You're going to see where maybe you had a couple really good days and the water temp was in this like 5 to 6 degree pocket. Maybe all of those days were cloudy. All of those days had, the wind in the same direction, or, you were fishing and a lot of those fish came off of wood on certain days or rock on certain days, and you can start to put together a pattern to either target the good data or avoid the bad data. So I think that's the best advice I can give you. You're already doing all of the hard work by just going out there and fishing. So now make sure to document it all so that you can learn from those experiences and you can actually apply it next time you're out there. All right, the next question here is from Reagan, who says, "Hey, Andrew, I know you're a kayak guy, and I know you can help me out with this. Being in college in the low country here in South Carolina, I've been fishing from a kayak for the past couple years now, and I've always had a massive difficulty in setting the hook and keeping fish on the hook all the way to my net when I'm using mostly weedless soft plastics or single-hooked moving baits, such as a chatterbait. My kayak isn't stable enough to stand in, so I have to sit down. When I'm fishing from my tiny boat back home, that I can actually stand up in, I'm landing almost every fish that bites and catching plenty of 3 to 5 pounders and sometimes up to 8 to 10 pound bass. But sitting in my kayak, I haven't been able to get anything over 3 into the net, and I'm kayak fishing much more often. I've been experimenting with different types of hooks and hook set methods, but nothing is working. I did the math and only landed 1 out of 13 today, and it was foul hooked in the belly. I need some tips while I save up enough money to buy a full-sized boat and motor so that I can stand up and fish. Thanks, Reagan. Well, Reagan, if you're not getting good hook penetration on the kayak with a single hook bait or with weedless baits, and you're missing what? You said like 12 out of 13 fish. There are 4 words that you need to hear, you need to absorb, and you need to manifest. And those 4 words are give them the beans. That is the answer to 90% of my kayak hookup rate troubles is I'm not driving that hook home hard enough. So you either need to swing harder, you need to sharpen your hooks, or you need to get a faster, more stout rod. And all of those 3 things would probably help tremendously. If your rod is too moderate or too soft, you're not going to get the hookup rate that you want. If your hooks are too dull or they're cheap and they're bending out, you're not going to get the hookup rate that you want. And if you're not setting the hook hard enough with authority, you're going to lose fish because it's not like a boat or standing on land. When you set the hook in a kayak, that hook set moves your kayak. Your kayak is not firmly planted on the water like a big boat is or like your feet are on the shore. So you have to overcompensate with that hook set a lot of times to get the same driving power that you would on solid land or on a heavier boat. So if you need any help remembering it, send me a DM. I've got a decal right over here on the desk that I can send you to put on your kayak to help you remember. But my advice is simply give them the beans. All right, and the last question here is from Tommy, and he says, "Hi Andrew, do you ever run into issues with your kayak rotating while working big baits? And if you do you have any tips to account for this? I've found that when fishing jerkbaits, spooks, crankbaits, and chatterbaits, that my kayak gradually spins during the retrieve, and that can make it difficult to effectively fish some spots. I figured upgrading to a kayak with a rudder would help, but it doesn't seem to have made much of a difference." Hey Tommy, yeah, that's definitely an issue that you're going to have, especially in cheaper kayaks, kayaks that don't track as well. Cheaper, lighter, smaller kayaks are going to have way more of a tendency to do what you're talking about, which is kind of like swing. When you're like saying you're working a chatterbait from the left side of the kayak, your kayak is going to want to turn left with that retrieve. That's just something that's going to happen sometimes. Now, there's a couple things you can do. One you mentioned, which I'm really surprised it didn't help at all, was something like a rudder. The other thing I might say is a skeg. Now, I don't know how to add a skeg to your kayak. I don't know what kind of kayak you're using, but a skeg a lot of times will help. A skeg is something that's like rigid and it's directly below your kayak. It just stays straight. It doesn't actually turn one way or the other, but it helps stabilize your kayak. So something like that can help. I would look at the weight distribution in your kayak. Make sure that the front or the back doesn't have, way more or way less weight than the other. So I don't know for sure, but I would think like say all of your weight is in the back of the kayak. That would probably make the front of your kayak easier to turn. The other thing I would say is I used to use that to my advantage. So when I used to have a cheaper kayak, like an Ascend 10T or something like that, I would actually use my casts to kind of steer my kayak. So when I was trying to cover water, I would, cast to the left. And then as my kayak started to move to the left, my next cast would be to the right so that I would straighten myself out. Now, that obviously works if you're fishing, open water and you're just trying to cover water, but that doesn't work very well, like you said. If you're really trying to flip to one particular piece of cover, you're trying to work a certain bank line or something, there's just certain things that are going to be annoying and you're going to have to deal with in a kayak. Your kayak moving during the retrieve is going to be one of those. Some other things that you might be able to do, obviously you can kind of play the wind a little bit. You could drop an anchor. There's all kinds of things that once you get way more comfortable in that kayak and you learn how it moves, you can kind of try and offset some of that. But yeah, I'm surprised the rudder didn't help because that helped me way back in the day when I got into like a Lure 10 from Feel Free. Before I put the rudder on, I used to have that problem a lot more than after I had the rudder on. The other thing I would say is make sure your rudder is pointed the right way so that you're avoiding turning the direction that you want to turn. That should definitely help. But other than that, skegs, anchors, playing the wind, using your cast to actually guide your kayak, you can make it as more of a positive than a negative. All right, that is today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. Next week, we have a very special guest episode. Get excited for that. Someone that has had a lot of success on the tournament trail the past year or two, and someone that we're going to talk specifically about some timely baits for this time of year. So get excited for that. As always, follow us on Instagram, Facebook at Tackle Talk Podcast. Find us on the web, tackletalkpodcast.com. Shoot me an email, tackletalkpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2021. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.